Barack Obama's 2008 campaign was historic for lots of reasons. Never before had such an unseasoned political professional risen to the heights of his party's ranks, become the nominee for the presidency, and then secure the presidency before. Candidates had kind of come from nowhere before. Barry Goldwater in 1964, who then got mauled by Johnson, and then Jimmy Carter in 1976 came out of nowhere to win Iowa and to win the Democratic primaries and the nomination, and ultimately win the White House in 76 before losing to Reagan in 80. But even Carter had some national exposure, limited national exposure as governor of Georgia. Barack Obama had lots of exposure after his historic 2004 convention speech, the red state, blue state speech, the famous speech. But he had just one term in the United States Senate. It was historic for lots of other reasons. Most obviously, he was the first African American major party candidate in either party. He was the first African American president, of course, in either party. He was one of the first, if not the first, successful campaigner to use online crowdsourced fundraising so successfully. He was one of the first candidates in political history to completely unseat his party's establishment power structure, and the fact that he grinded out a victory over the establishment candidate and presumptive favorite for the presidency, Hillary Clinton, in 2008. And so we can go on and on and on, frankly, about the successes and the historic nature of the Obama 2008 campaign. But one of the things I want to emphasize today, and we're just going to talk about, as is in keeping with all of our talks about specific elections, just a snippet of the election that is historically important, and it helps us re-emphasize or learn something new about the campaign lessons we learned at the outset of this course, the theories that we talked about earlier. In keeping with that idea, the one historic component that I think is interesting about Obama's 2008 campaign is how smooth it was. One seasoned political commentator, ABC reporter, said that the Obama 2008 campaign was the smoothest, meaning the least gaffe-filled, the most gaffe-free campaign, the most mistake-free campaign that he had covered, and he had covered elections through the entirety of the modern era. In other words, aside from a few slip-ups here and there, Obama just amazingly didn't make the kind of campaign mistakes that many people make, and thus he gave his opponents much less to work with in terms of coming up with a negative frame for what he was doing with his campaign and with the country. But what I want to concentrate on is that there was this one moment, a few week period, 3 weeks or so, in August of 2008, when Obama was most vulnerable. This was the moment when John McCain turned Obama's popularity. At many points during the campaign, it seemed like Obama was heading a movement, a social movement, a passionate social movement, if you will, and not a typical political campaign. McCain and his handlers were able to take all of that positive momentum, all of that popularity, all that yes we can-ness that had swept much of the public, and flip it on its head. And instead of defining Obama as the person of a generation, defining him as a superficial celebrity out for his own glorification. So today's story is just a quick story, a quick lecture about the promise and the peril of what has become known as the celebrity ad.